Hello, hello! Today I will be bringing you Friedrich der Große. It's the German T9 battleship, and it's probably my favorite T9 battleship in the game right now. Now that's a bit of a bold claim considering the Iowa exists, which is considered extremely strong, especially for T9, but this ship has taken over the top position for me, even though it can't compete in certain areas. For example, well, the most obvious thing should be pointed out, of course. You can see I'm running the stealth build on it with detectability of 13 kilometers. I ended up running concealment on quite many of these German battleships because people would recognize me. You can see in chat, "Ooh, a shiny new German BB to shoot at." They recognize my name or they recognize the ship, and then they would focus fire me extra, so I chose to run with stealth, which I kind of ended up liking regardless, but it was definitively influenced by the sheer focus fire I got. Anyway, the first thing, of course, to point out is the gun difference. We are talking 8 versus 9 guns, which is, of course, worth considering when comparing it both to the Izumo and the Iowa. And another thing that's, of course, worth pointing out is that both the other battleships can bring 6 guns to bear when pointing right at you, whereas this one can only bring 4. Now, that's the price you kind of have to pay for getting these big 420mm guns at T9. And these guns, I really, really like them. You might have seen from my earlier commentary just how much I like these big guns in T10. At T9, they're even better because it's pretty hilarious when you end up against the T8s or T7s and you just punch straight through the armor every time without any issues. Especially against torps, you can do really obscene damage. Now, maneuverability, this ship sits about in the middle. It has the worst turning circle at 950, but that's not really saying that much. I think the Iowa has like 920, so we're talking about 30 meters additional. On the flip side, it has better rudder shift than both the other T9 battleships. It has 17.5 seconds, while the other two have like 19.7 or something without any mods or something. So it kind of sits in the middle. Speed-wise, it also sits in the middle. It has 30 knots of speed. It beats the Izumo, that's got 28.2, I think, but loses to the Iowa that has 33, I think, fully upgraded. So once again, very much sitting in the middle, which is kind of a common theme. Now, it loses to both of the other ones in range. It has 20.3 kilometers of range, but I think that's plenty. I thought it's plenty at T10, so it's more than plenty at T9. I mean, of course, you lose out some versatility when you're limited on range, but I usually tend to push up within that range without any issues anyway, so I don't find it affecting my play much at all. Now, the torpedo belt is 25%, which would be an issue if it was T10, but at T9 none of the battleships actually have that good of a torpedo belt. The other two have like, the American counterpart, the Iowa, has also 25%, and the Izumo has 28%, so it's not like anyone really has a good... I mean, if you compared it to something to Yamato's 56%, it would be extremely lacking, but no battleship at T9 really has that good of a torpedo belt, so it's, once again, it kind of sits right in the middle. One thing I do feel that it's got very, very much an advantage in, and that's the armor. This armor, I think, is extremely trolly. Now, I can't say with 100% certainty that this ship has turtleback armor, but the armor certainly feels extremely trolly on this ship. Like, I've been hit full broadside, showing full broadsides to people, and I've barely been scratched. Like this, when I made a mistake in a turn or something, I'd expected to be citadeled and absolutely murdered, and I ended up taking not much damage at all. So I do really feel, at least the ship is extremely tanky. I can't with certainty say it's turtleback armor, but it feels like it, and the ship is very, very tanky. Another thing that of course adds to the tankiness is the fact that the HP pool, it has 84k HP, which handily beats both the other T9s. So that's something that it straight up wins in. So both armor and HP I certainly think it's beating them both. And now it also has the best secondaries. Let's see if I can actually show them here against these two guys. The default, it's got 28 secondary guns, and all of them shoot HE, which is very important because AP secondaries, especially the higher tier you go, are pretty useless, whereas HE are always useful because setting fires is effective against any type of ship. And of course, HE doesn't care about angling and so forth. So 28 of them, and I think the stock range is 7 kilometers, so even with just something like AFT, you already got 8.4. So even here, when I'm not running like I'm not running a secondary build or anything, my secondaries are already opening up and starting to hammer him, which is of course great, especially when you got so many of them. Now the concealment, once again, pretty much right in the middle. It's got 17.3 kilometers stock, which is it beats the horrible Izuma concealment, which is 18.7, but it really can't match Iowa's, which is 16.2. So once again, right in the middle, which seems to be a very common thing. I have no idea why people actually hated it. A lot of community contributors and super testers really hated this ship, and I don't really understand it. I mean, it seems to be so right in the middle of everything, except for the things that it pretty much beats them in. Now, one thing that I will be demonstrating better on later in this commentary is the anti-air. This ship has absolutely excellent anti-air, and it becomes straight up monstrous. I mean, you can make a really trolley build if you go full anti-air spec on this thing. If you just go all out spec for anti-air with modules and captain perks, you become such an anti-air monster, it's not even funny. You saw that, by the way, 20k. I actually only hit 5 shells, and only 4 were penetrations, and I did like almost 20k volley to that turpits. So the guns are very satisfying to use, which is what I like, having big, like powerful guns. I hate having these frustrating guns that you get bounces and crap with. I feel like if you hit something, it really should like reward you. Now, as I was saying, the anti-air is really nutty. I will go over that. I will actually demonstrate that later. But you can basically break 1000 DPS at over 5 kilometers of range. So with focus firing, of course. So very insane. But now all of these things put it either fairly in the even or with an advantage. But this is where something huge comes in, and that's of course the fact that you have access to Hydra acoustic search. You have the German Hydra, the excellent German Hydra, which not only lets you see through smokes and such, but it practically makes you impervious to torpedoes since you have so much time to react and dodge them. So this is pretty much the only T9 battleship that I feel really has no weaknesses. I mean, the German Hydra allows you to deal with DDs and torpedo launching cruisers far easier than either one of the other 2 battleships can. And that's one of the things that really ultimately pushes it into my favorite position as a T9 BB. Sure, it can't angle the turrets the same way the other 2 can, but it doesn't really have any true weaknesses. Because you can just constantly bring... You have no real weaknesses except for basically mistakes you make in your play, but you never have that situation where you feel powerless, like there was nothing you could have done to like do better in a situation. Anti-air is so strong that you can straight up mow down any planes that come at you, and you can significantly hamper any carrier. You never feel weak or useless when facing a carrier. With Hydra acoustic search, you can straight up confidently contest any enemy DDs, and some Russian cruiser Atagos or something to rush you with torps. You spot the torps the second they launch them. The Montana is giving me broadside, and as I said, these guns are strong at T10. So at T9, I mean, of course, it's the same guns that you got on the T10. So something like a Montana giving you broadside, you can punish him so heavily. And in this ship, I wasn't really afraid of anything, which is why it probably ultimately turned out to be my favorite ship, is that you literally have no fear of anything in this ship. I mean, of course, all battleships kind of fear the basic HE spam from a ZA, triple Citadel, by the way, 40k to that guy. You, of course, feel the basic things like ZA and Yamato, But other than that, like there was no real things to fear. I was confident in my armor, in pushing almost anything else. Hell, I even pushed Yamatos in this thing. That's how confident I was in the armor. If you get close, the secondaries open up and just shower them in HE and fires. And I mean, when you combine them, you got this turret traverse, these secondaries, big guns, troll armor, hydroacoustic surge. You realize it's great at brawling just about anything. Excellent AA makes it really strong against any carriers. So you got this complete package that can't quite match the other two when it comes to being angled gun power, meaning you can bring 6 guns to bear when you're pointing right at someone. It can't match either of them, but honestly, if it could match, it would be brokenly overpowered in my opinion. It already feels so satisfying to use as it is. I could only imagine if they would have gone for some sort of turret setup or something that would allow it to match the other two. I feel like this ship would have been broken overpowered. And these are the things that ultimately have pushed it into my favorite ship. You can see my secondaries opening up now. I'm not even using any secondary spec. And 12 hits, 13. It's got so many of these secondaries that you just constantly spam out hits after hits after hits after hits. And once again, what makes it great at brawling? You see my Hydra's active. You see his torps. A Turpitz, like, he has no chance of hitting me with torps. Like a Turpitz that other battleships might fear to get into brawling range. Because of my Hydra, I can see the torps the second he launches them. You really don't fear any other ship in this thing. In fact, whereas I would consider the T10 outmatched by many things, and you fear a lot of things in the T10, like you have to fear torpedo DDs because of the poor maneuverability, or Russian cruisers because of the poor maneuverability, or you have to fear AA. In this thing, on the other hand, you really don't fear anything. Like, if you play it, if this ship played well, it's probably one of the most satisfying experiences I've had. Now this was a fairly short game, it ended here 12 minutes. I ended up doing, how much damage did I end up doing? Let's see, 140k damage, so not anything special, but then again I was against T10, and it has had that nice sweet Wally triple citadel on the Montana with basically 2 turrets worth 10 hits, 67,000 damage done to that Montana. Anyway, let's move on from here. Right, let's move on to the anti-air I was speaking about. You can see here I'm running a full AA build. I can show it off. AFT, manual AA, and of course basic firing training, module wise, AA range, AA effectiveness. Oh, and let's slap a flag on, just for the sake of the demonstration. Let's slap a flag on. It gives 10%. And now let's look at the AA. 405 DPS at 5 kilometers and 201 DPS at 6.5 kilometers. Now with manual AA it doubles to 201, so it becomes 400. So you got 400 on both of those, and then you add in focus fire, which is 30%. Ta-da! You're breaking 1000 DPS. Of course, saying that, no vid would be complete without a demonstration. I queued up 2 Taiho bots against me. Usually you can't face 2 carriers anymore, but because bots usually stagger their planes, I figured I'd put 2 bots against me to give it a more realistic feel of like multiple planes swarming you. And these are T9 Taiho planes. And just to give you an example of how, if you spec full AA on this ship, there's no carrier who will want to go for a Friedrich. Trust me, like, people are going to be, I think if just a couple of people spec for AA, it's gonna scar any other carriers from ever attacking this ship first. I mean, they're gonna give the ship a wide berth. I can't think of any carrier who wants to get close to this. Like, it instantly picks off T9 planes as soon as they get within range. It's really disgusting. These are Taiho planes. Okay, of course there's because it's bot, you never know if they might be running stock or so forth. But this should give you some sort of an idea of just how strong you can make this anti-air if you spec for it. Because considering this is a goddamn battleship and not a cruiser, being able to pump out this much damage is certainly very impressive. And that's kind of part of the whole thing I was talking about, that you don't really fear anything in the ship. Like, even if a carrier goes for you, you know that carrier is going to pay so heavily to do any sort of damage to you, and God forbid there's any other AA nearby helping you out, and it just turns into this complete slaughter, like this absolute slaughter where they just lose all their planes. That's all there is to it. The AA on this ship is fantastic, and once again, that's why the option of going full anti-air troll build on the ship is certainly a very, very viable one. Sadly, my Friedrich was removed before I could go over the modules, but I can do it from the tech tree just as easily, so not a big deal. First thing I would go for is the hull, because I think the default 18.5 kilometer range is plenty, so you don't need a speed upgrade either. Go for the hull first for the bonus, then get the range once you've gotten the bonus of AA and HP. Basically, you want the AA bonus so carriers won't harass you. And once you've gotten the hull upgrade, you get the range to buff it up to the 20 kilometers. Once you have the range upgrade, that's when you can go for the better guns. I mean, it's 1.8 kilometers, so it's not a huge upgrade range, but still, it's nice to have that additional range. And then you get the gun upgrade. I really, really like these stronger guns, even though it says it gives you -1 to artillery. I don't really believe in that. And finally, of course, get the speed. Your default speed is 27.3, so it's not like you're slow to begin with. So the additional speed is, of course, always nice, though, especially in high tiers. Now, module-wise, I'll just use my Montana as an example. You can almost get, of course, the AA guns mod is optional. You can go for that one if you want to go buff your AA, but other than that, artillery plotting room, I mean, actually not plotting room. You don't have plotting room. I have to actually show it on my Yamato, I think. But using the AA guns mod is definitely an option. Or you can go for the aiming system mod, which is available to German battleships. So either one of those, AA mod 2 or aiming system, depending on which build you want to go for, both are certainly viable options, as you could see in my game earlier. Now let's jump back to the Montana. The rest of the upgrades are very much stock battleship upgrades that I usually go for: faster reload, stealth, damage control 1 and 2, pretty much the usual stuff I go for battleships. I've been doing the same thing here. And but yeah, I can actually just use my Montana captain, because this is the same captain I would go for. Basics of survivability, expert marksman for turret traverse, and you go superintendent first, not vigilance first. Superintendent because you have access to hydro at T8, T9, T10, so rather have an additional hydro. Advanced firing training for secondary and AA range, concealment expert for that stealth, and finally, when you get additional points, you get vigilance, otherwise BFT. Anyway, that was my Friedrich commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.